Just a robot.
I have never jumped on a Laci Green bandwagon before. Normally I talk about a Laci Green video after everybody else has talked about it. But today, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. Today's video will be on Trans Men Explain Male Privilege.
If you don't think male privilege exists, you are wrong.
I love how this video starts. If you disagree with me, you're wrong. Talk about treating your opinion as if though it's fact.
Gender bias is often ignored because it seems invisible and subjective to those who benefit from it.
Yes, Laci, I do agree. I'm pretty sure you don't notice that women almost always get custody of the children.
Trans men have experienced both sides of the gender-divided society, so I'm gonna let them explain male privilege in their own words.
Yeah, but didn't you just pick a bunch of trans men who agree with your narrative? I'm just saying you have the power to pick who's on your show.
Male privilege is the bullshit idea that men are better than anybody else.
By anyone else, do you mean women? Second, how is that a privilege? Plenty of women also think that they're the superior gender.
Male privilege is the ability to move about the world in the way that you want to.
There is no law in America that says women can't do the same. By the way, remember what he says here, because we're going to come back to it.
It's the experience of being left alone and free to be yourself.
I don't think you know what left alone means. Also, are you signed up for the draft? And have you sent that check to your ex-wife for child support?
Privilege is also like the absence of experience. As a man, I have the privilege of getting on New York City subway train at 1 a.m. and don't have to worry about a man wagging his dick at me.
Has that really happened to you? And if it did, what do you want? Do you want it to be against the law? Well, guess what? It already is. It's called public indecency.
The first time I noticed I had male privilege was when I was walking home from hanging out with a bunch of friends who happened to be women. They had expressed being a little worried about walking home in the dark, and while I was walking, I realized that I had no worry in the world about being talked to or stared at or followed or assaulted.
Oh, so you felt more safe. Well, guess what? Men can be assaulted too. In fact, men are more likely to get assaulted. Also, if you're walking around like this, you're going to get the shit beaten out of you.
So a man could just walk down the street and no one is going to bother him. No one's going to ask him to smile. No one's going to ask him where he's going. No one's going to ask him if he's married. No one's going to ask him if they can walk with him. But this is something that I know women experience every day.
Have you experienced it? Can you prove that women experience this? And by the way, someone saying good morning to you is not someone sexually harassing you.
Post-transition life, my God, walking down the street is so glorious, I can actually think.
I love how sexist that sounded. As a man, I can actually think.
First time I ever experienced male privilege was on social media. I've always been the type to express myself and talk real crazy. And when I did it prior to transitioning, it wasn't okay. But the minute that I transitioned and everybody looked at me as that male figure, it was like, oh man, that's hilarious. I'm like, hey guy, I've been hilarious all this time. So what are you talking about?
So you're saying you experienced this on social media? Interesting. Did you know you don't have to be trans to change your gender on social media? You can say you're a girl if you're a guy, and you can say you're a guy if you're a girl. And let me tell you, every single guy I know who has lied about being a girl has told me the same story. They said they never received so much free stuff.
An unexpected aspect of male privilege for me was being taken way more seriously than I was before, and it's funny because I have all the same ideas, still thinking about the same things, and yet sometimes I would literally just be talked over or laughed at. Now people will often quiet down.
I know I have said this a lot throughout the video, but it's still relevant. Do you have any proof of this? Because anecdotal evidence is anecdotal.
And having experienced that from both sides of the spectrum, as female and male, I call bullshit on that right now.
You call bullshit on what? I'm so confused.
Male privilege and sexism isn't just a problem for women, but it's also about liberating ourselves. Masculinity is very diverse. Masculinity is what it is to you. You don't have to be a brute. You don't have to be an athlete. And my masculinity looks like a man who likes puppies and babies. And there's nothing wrong with that.
That is true, there is nothing wrong with that. However, in today's society, there is something wrong with being a tough man. If you're a man and you try to do something tough, toxic masculinity!
I was in the club this night and my brothers are around. I think it might have been Single Ladies. Something came on and I'm like, the single ladies, the single. And they go, you're a man now. Men don't wild out to Beyonce like that. And I said, but it's music.
How is that a privilege in any way? Do white people have privilege because they can't say the word nigga? Also, earlier in the video, this was said.
Male privilege is the ability to move about the world in the way that you want to.
These two statements contradict one another. Laci, you really should fire your editor.
There's no one way to be a man. There's a spectrum of masculinity and just be chill.
What if a man wants to be a tough guy? Would that be okay?
If a guy wants to really understand male privilege and understand what it is, talk to women.
And if a woman wants to understand female privilege, she should talk to a man.
Step back, listen to what other people are going through, ask them what they're going through, and I think you'll see that the world doesn't run exactly the way you think it does.
Listen to your own fucking advice and leave your fucking hug box.
You're doing nothing wrong by having privilege. It's just what you do with it that matters.
And Laci is using her privilege to push her political agenda.
I'd like to thank all of our guests for giving their time and thoughts on this issue. We'll see you next time.
So it's pretty obvious what Laci Green is trying to do. She got a bunch of trans men who agreed with her narrative, and then said, look at these trans men. They have experienced both genders, and they prefer being a man. Therefore, male privilege is real. But guess what? Not every trans person agrees with you, Laci. For example, Blair White is a trans woman, and she thinks she has more privilege being a woman than being a man. There was also a book called Self-Made Man. It was written by a feminist, and it was about her experience being disguised as a man. She expected to get a whole bunch of privilege being disguised as a man, but after 18 months being disguised as a man, she decided she liked being a woman better. Wrecked Feminist did a very good video on it, so if you want to know more, link to that video will be down below. My eyes have seen the glory of the cleansing of YouTube, debunking SJWs and feminazis too. We criticize reactionists in hopes they get the boot, just to roll on marches on